Hello and welcome to the Graphic 45 YouTube channel. My name is Lynn, or LV Handcrafted here on YouTube, and today this is the mini album that I'll be making. It's a landscape album. It's a great size for 4x6 photos. You may want to trim down those photos a little bit just so that the beautiful pattern papers are visible, but it's a very beginner friendly, really simple album. So if you've never made a mini album before, this is a great one for you. Let's make this. Let me start off by showing you what all you'll need. So some pattern paper. I've chosen the 8x8 paper collection. This is Sun-Kissed. It's the collector's edition. Then I am going to use some ivory solid color cardstock in 80 pound. You'll need two pieces that are cut to 5 1/4 by 7 1/4. Then some lightweight chipboard cut to 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. You'll need two of those, and you could use a cereal box for that too if you don't want to go out and buy lightweight chipboard. Then from that same ivory cardstock, I've cut hinge pieces that are 4 1/4 high by 2 3/4 wide, one of those, and three pieces that are 4 1/4 high by 1 inch wide. From that same ivory cardstock, I've cut 12 pieces that are 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. Optional are Tyvek to reinforce our spine, and paper leather to again reinforce the cover and the spine, as well as offer a decorative touch. So those are the supplies you'll need, and in addition to all of that, you'll want your adhesive too. I like to use a nice strong adhesive like score tape, but I've also used double-sided adhesive sheets, and as well I've used some liquid adhesive too. Now, being that this is a photo album, you will want to make sure that whatever adhesives you use, especially on the pages that are where your photos would go on top of, you want to make sure that those adhesives are acid free, and that way they don't run the risk of yellowing your photos over time. If you are choosing to use Tyvek, I like to use these Tyvek wristbands. They are perforated. Even though they come in sheets, they are very easy to tear apart. And Tyvek, if you are not familiar with the material, is man-made. It's a material that's actually used a lot in house construction, and the properties that make it great for reinforcing your hinge, as I'm doing here, is that it is resistant to being torn, and as well it is water resistant. The fact that it's water resistant isn't a huge deal. It's more the fact that you can't really tear this by hand. You can cut through it with scissors or a paper trimmer, but that's what makes it really great for reinforcing our spine, any hinges, essentially any folded paper that might get exercised, like a page turn would exercise this particular fold here. Now these spine pieces, this is one of the three pieces that was cut to 4 1/4 high by 1 inch wide. Along that 1 inch edge, I've just scored it at 3/8 of an inch on both sides, leaving a 1/4 of an inch in the center. So that 1/4 of an inch will be the gusset in between each page. And the 3/8 of an inch on each side, those will be glue tabs where we will attach our pages. What I did was also miter the edges or the corners of my glue tabs, and that way when I go to fit my page base onto these hinges, it just makes for a neater, a cleaner finish. So if I don't have it 100% lined up, you're not going to really notice. And the way I miter is I made sure that I just cut from the score line and I cut inward. So that way, that 1/4 inch gusset, that's going to sit nice and flush with the top and the bottom of our album. It's only the glue tab that is going to have a little bit trimmed off. And I'm going to attach this Tyvek here and make sure that everything is burnished really, really well. So these folds on that 3/8 inch on both sides, you just want to make sure that you exercise that back and forth so that it folds and it turns easily, because that's where our pages will get attached. And the larger piece that you see that is 4¼ inches tall by 2¾ wide, you want to essentially do the same thing, which is to line it with some of this Tyvek along the fold to reinforce that fold, so that as the that fold gets exercised back and forth, and this piece in particular is where our front and our back covers will get attached. You want to just make sure that that fold is secured with the Tyvek, because after all, cardstock, it is just paper. So over time, opening and closing the album, which you hope it will get exercised a lot, that people are going to be looking at the album a lot. And so it's nice to just make sure if this is an album that you want to be a little bit more durable. And if it's an album maybe for kids, you may want it to be durable, just because kids might be a little bit rougher on the album than an adult would be. But in any case, if you want it to last the test of time, it does help to just reinforce that a little bit. And I actually go in and line the entire middle portion with Tyvek as well, mostly for aesthetic reasons, just so that I have that same color running through. And so I did go back off camera and add some more Tyvek so that you don't see any ivory in that center panel there. And here is an adhesive sheet that I'll be using, and I'm lining my lightweight chipboard with this adhesive sheet. And the reason for this is so that I get a really, really nice, firm, solid stick. And these lightweight chipboard pieces will be our front and back covers. So I want to make sure that anything that sticks to the front cover and the back cover, that it won't have any bubbles, it won't have any glue lines, and it's going to be well stuck down and well secured. And that's why I like the edge-to-edge application of the adhesive sheets, because the sheets are going to be much more economical than buying, strips, smaller strips, or narrower strips of adhesive. So it's more economical for one, and second, it's just easier to apply than using a lot of multiple small strips. But use what you have. If you have small strips, you can use it. And what I'm going to do is stick that down onto my piece of solid color cardstock. This is 80-pound cardstock, and it was the piece that measured 5¼ by 7¼ so basically an inch wider than the lightweight chipboard, and that gives us enough to wrap all the way around. And you just want to kind of take your time with this and burnish, fold gently just to avoid any cracking, because again, this is going to be our front and back covers. I did miter the corners so that when we fold over all of these glue tabs, that there isn't excessive amounts of overlapping cardstock in the corner there. So by trimming away that little triangle that is to miter the corners, it helps to reduce that bulk. You don't have to get it exact. If there's still a little bit of overlap once it's folded, that's fine. Also, when you're doing that, you want to make sure that you don't trim right up to that corner of your chipboard, because you want to leave about 1/8 of an inch or so just to make sure that the corner of your chipboard really does actually get enclosed, because you don't want to leave it bare. And so you want to make sure as you're mitering to just aim for roughly 1/8 of an inch or so away from the corner of your chipboard. And again, I'm going to use some double-sided dry adhesive to glue down these glue tabs. I'm getting it right to the edge, giving everything a nice firm burnish. And I'm using an ergonomic bone folder to do my burnishing because it's wider, helps me cover a wider area. And I am going to use a little bit of liquid adhesive as well, right where the, I'm going to just draw a line of adhesive right where the chipboard is. Helps to soften that edge a little bit, gives us a more permanent stick. And it's great to use the combination of the two, because your dry adhesive is going to give you a really nice instant stick. But depending on your climate, there is the possibility that dry adhesive, when and if it's exposed to air, it actually might dry out completely and lose its stickiness. And that can happen in particular in climates that are high in humidity. And that is the reason why whatever adhesive you use, you do want to burnish really well, because when you are burnishing over dry adhesive, it's helping to push the air out, because it's forcing really nice firm contact between the two surfaces that you're trying to adhere together and pushing all of the air out. When you are burnishing your liquid adhesive, it's helping to spread that glue out evenly so that you don't get any glue lines, that you get a nice, again, a nice firm stick, that it spreads the glue out so that it's actually covering more surface area. Because usually I just draw on lines of glue. I don't actually spread my glue out. So when I go to burnish, that's when I'm actually spreading the glue out. And so whichever adhesives you like to use, whether you only like to use dry adhesives or you only like to use liquid adhesives, either way, it's going to benefit from nice firm burnishing. So I highly recommend that. Now with this piece here, what you want to do is just give yourself some tick marks every 1/4 of an inch. So the spine, when it's all done, is going to measure 1 3/4 of an inch wide. So between your score lines, you want to give yourself tick marks at every 1/4 of an inch. I think I forgot to mention that I did score this at 1/2 an inch on both sides. So along that 2 3/4 inch edge, score at 1/2 an inch on both sides. And that leaves you 1 3/4 of an inch in the center. So between your two score lines, give yourself tick marks every 1/4 of an inch. And that's how we know how to place our hinge pieces here. So I am just lining up my hinges so that they are slotted into one of those 1/4 inch sections, and there's going to be a 1/4 of an inch in between each glue tab, and that gives us that 1/4 inch gusset in between every page. So this is a really easy, very simple way to do a hinge, and it makes it super, super easy. It's still very secure, especially if you do reinforce with the Tyvek. And that makes it so that as you're flipping back and forth, you get that extra strength from the Tyvek, and it's really easy. It's just a few couple of cuts, straight cuts, and I think it makes for me creating mini albums a lot less intimidating. So now on this piece here, I have applied some strong score tape along the both the edges, the long edges, and I squiggled a little bit of liquid adhesive, and I'm going to attach that to the inside of our front and back covers because we want to hide that glue tab, and that way from the outside it's a nice clean finish, and on the inside we can hide that glue tab with some pattern paper. So here is the collector's edition. This is Sun-Kissed. It was recently released. I'm using the 8x8 paper pad because I think scale-wise the print works really well for an album this size. And as well, all I need to do as I cut down my papers is just trim it to 6 inches wide to start, and then 4 inches wide. And you get a very efficient use of your papers. So that's why I designed this album to be this size, so that we can get 2 decorative panels out of our pattern papers from just the one sheet of 8x8. And so you don't end up using much paper at all. I was actually able to get everything that I needed for this mini album just using one of each of the 8 different double-sided pattern papers. And so that still leaves me 2/3 of this paper pack to use for other projects. So really, really efficient use of papers, and usually mini albums do require quite a lot of paper, but with this design and with this size album, it's really not a ton of paper, and you still have a bunch of those strips left over, a bunch of the 2-inch strips left over that you can still use for other projects. So what I'm doing with these panels here, again, they are on our cover, even though it's on the inside cover. I do like to, again, get that edge to edge adhesive just to really make sure it's nice and clean, that there are no bubbles, especially because there's not going to be any photographs put on top of these. So that's one of the main reasons why on the cover pieces I do like to have that edge to edge coverage, because then, especially using the dry adhesive, because sometimes, not with graphic 45 papers, just really depends on the pattern papers that you're using, but some pattern papers react a little bit differently to liquid adhesives, where it might warp a little, you might get you might get glue lines, for example. Don't have to really worry about that with graphic 45 papers because they're so thick. But if you want to be on the safe side, the dry adhesive would work really well there and would avoid a lot of those issues of warping or glue lines. So to create our pages, these are the cut from the Ivory 80-pound solid color cardstock that I used, and each of these panels was cut to 4 1/4 tall by 6 1/4 wide, so the same as our album cover. And what I'm doing really quickly here is just lining each of these hinges with some score tape right at the top edge, just to really make sure that I get a nice strong stick here. And again, I'm going to combine this with some liquid adhesive, because the dry adhesive is going to give me that instant grab so that I can keep moving forward with my project, but that liquid adhesive is what will give me that long-term permanent hold. And with my page bases, I'm only putting adhesive on the bottom edge and on the right-hand edge. And I'm running a thin line of glue along just that outer edge of the dry adhesive. So that leaves that left edge, the left short edge, open. And that's what will get attached to the hinge on my spine. So I didn't need to put adhesive there because I already have the dry adhesive, and I ran a bead of glue, liquid adhesive, on the hinge. And that's how I will stick down this this page here. Now this is a pocket page, so the top is actually open, so you can actually slip in some additional photo mats. You can slip in some, if you wanted to put some keepsakes, maybe some tickets to a show that you went to, movie theater tickets, etc. You have those pockets at the top that you can slip additional things into. Now I've already cut down my pattern paper. Each of these again measures 4 by 6, so you can get 2 of these panels from each 8 by 8 sheet of pattern paper. And I'm taking a moment just to order them because in the Sunkissed collection there are some beautiful navy blues, there are some beautiful coral colors, and I just want to make sure that as I am figuring out the order that I want to show these in, that it's a nice mix between the two. And one thing to maybe think about as you're figuring out the order is usually when you have any page open, there's sort of that 2-page spread. So you might want to consider, what's visible in that 2-page spread. Are those 2 patterns going to look nice against one another? Now keep in mind that there's going to be photos added to this, and you can start to decorate this even more if you wanted. So if you want to take your album to the next level, you can add some additional interactive elements like waterfall elements. You can add some pockets on top of this. I wanted to show a very basic, very beginner-friendly mini album for anyone who's never created a mini album before, so that you can have this as a foundation, as a starting point, and then take it from there. So I've got all of my pages decorated, and now I will decorate the album cover. And again, what I've done is line my pattern paper edge to edge with my adhesive sheets. And I did run a little bit of liquid adhesive because I'm not worried about Graphic 45 papers showing any glue lines. They are the papers are really high quality, very thick, and so there's no danger of that, but I do want to make sure that this is a nice permanent stick, so that's why I added the little bit of liquid adhesive. And I'll get my front and my back cover attached. And again, you can decorate this more if you'd like and really dress it up, add some more elements to it. What I'm going to do is add this, what's called paper leather. It goes by a lot of different names, but this is essentially, it's very similar to Tyvek in that it also cannot be torn. And you can cut it, you can use a trimmer to cut it, you can cut it with scissors, but it's not tearable. And so that is why I've decided to add that as just an extra reinforcement to that hinge on the front and the back covers. And as well, I think it makes it look very interesting, kind of gives it that leather bound look. And it's called paper leather because it has the durability and the look of a leather, but it is a paper product still. So really, really interesting. And in fact, it's the same sort of stuff that if you have tags on your jeans, it's made from the same material as that paper leather. You could actually crumple it up, put it through the wash if you wanted it to give it some extra texture. So here is a final look at my mini album. I did finish it up with some photo mats that I created. Those are the little half circles that you see peeking up through the top there. And so because each of our pocket pages is a top loading pocket, I've gone ahead and created 6 photo mats to tuck inside those pockets. And if you are curious about the photo mats, they are pretty simple to make. I've cut them to 3 3/4 of an inch tall by 5 1/4 inch wide. So 3 3/4 tall, 5 1/4 wide. And I used a 1 1/4 inch circle punch, and I just punched out of those leftover strips that we had, those 2-inch strips left over. I just punched a couple so that I can have this nice little pull tab to make it easy to pull in and out. I did a 1/2 inch corner rounding on the 2 bottom corners and that top right corner. So really, really simple, really easy, and you have a spot for additional photos or for some, journaling if you wanted. So I hope that if you have never made a mini album before, that you try out this very beginner-friendly mini album. And even if you are an experienced mini album, this is a nice, quick, easy project that might make for a really wonderful gift. Thanks again for joining me today. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.